name is Vidya Eashwer. I head up Forge Data. Forge Data is a new business under Forge Global, about 18 months old.
I'm Dan Siciliano. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Nikkl. Prior to that, I had a long career at Stanford University. I was a professor of the practice at law school and co-founded and ran the Watt Center for Global Governance. So what I do most of the time now is run Nikkl, which is fintech that obviously uses Forge Data quite a bit.
Thanks, Dan. That's really, your background is amazing. Can you tell us more about Nikkl?
Sure. We've been around for almost a year now. It stemmed out of a project that was in part related to Stanford, but in short, we help unicorn employees with their capital needs. So as you know, they might have options, they might have shares, and over time they have needs for different capital. We satisfy those needs in a variety of different ways, but most importantly, our ability to do that hinges on our ability to understand the current value of those companies where those employees work, and not just the preferred share value or necessarily the secondary market trading value, but the appropriate common share value in consideration of all the things that are happening in the market. And that's where Forge Data comes in a really important way.
Dan, we know currently it's a down market. What kind of challenges is Nikkl facing in the current market conditions?
Yeah, it's one of those markets where you literally, before you talk to anyone, you look at the market to make sure you're not going to be surprised. So clearly, this market is not for the faint of heart. There's no other way of looking at it that way. But we really believe at Nikkl that technology companies, particularly unicorn technology companies, which are private, are a wonderful opportunity generally. And the fundamentals of technology companies, creating new markets, pushing tremendous efficiencies into a system that really needs efficiencies, and or disrupting pre-existing markets. And the fundamentals of successful technology companies have not changed, even though our economy is kind of going through a lot of volatility. And what important difference to keep in mind is that as compared to even 5 or 10 and certainly 20 years ago, the companies that we're looking at, these unicorns, would have been publicly traded companies by and large. They've even been on the side who would call them mid-caps. It's just that they have access to private capital now for much longer, and they're optimizing this opportunity. And it means a relatively opaque market that's hard to see and hard to understand. And not to bring it back around, but that's why the data matters so much, right? Like in a public market, you just look at the market. In these private markets, which are of a scope and scale of many public markets of years gone by, there's a lot less transparency. So you have to work harder to get that valuation right. And that, I think, was the way that you work through such a difficult market, right? You don't want to value a company incorrectly, because then anything you do on top of that analysis, the transaction is likely not to come out the way you want.
I completely agree with you. I think in the public markets, a lot of the unicorns would be small cap to mid cap. And it's just because of the lack of transparency, it's such an opaque market. And it's also a market that's sort of closed off for a lot of people from an access perspective. But to your point, I think data plays a big role in terms of opening up that transparency and making it something that induces confidence in investors. So looking at that, what role does data specifically play in your business at Nikkl?
We are essentially a software technology company that is interacting with capital markets to help unicorn employees. But at its heart, one core of that is assessing real-time current valuation. And anyone who does valuation for certainly VC funded companies generally, and even very large, established unicorn companies that have cash flows, and like we've mentioned, those companies require current data and a sort of triangulation of available data, to your earlier point. And so we use the data that we have taken from Forge to calculate real-time current valuations so that we can help unicorn employees in an intelligent, quantitative way, where you're not just kind of guessing because all you have is a round from 2 months ago and maybe some speculation.
So how is Forge Data sort of helping you solve this problem that you currently face in the space? which is not specifically unique for you, but in your use case and how you're looking at trying to derive common share price value, how would you say that Forge data is really creating a value for you that other players are not?
So there's a couple differences. So first, recency and speed to updating of the data is very, very important. And Forge does that very well. So, when there's a new price ground for a venture funded company, you load the data quickly, it gets done, it gets updated faster than anyone we observe. And that getting the most recent data all to market is obviously critical. The second is, I don't know the secret sauce of how you've done this, but I'll tell you, I'll observe it for you. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it, do it more. And that is, it's impossible to get all of this exactly right 100% of the time, all the time. And you guys have a very fast, first you have very high accuracy, but if there's ever an anomaly or discrepancy, your responsiveness and your correcting of it and picking out anything else that was related to that is remarkable and really gives confidence, right? Because you don't want to build models and other things that, users of your data do and find out a week later, 2 weeks later, there's some flaw. And I can't tell you how much my chief revenue officer, Mike Tuesday, who's a co-founder, how much he sings your praises. He's like, I saw this question, I had this question. Turns out it wasn't a problem, but it made them look at something else, and they fixed it right away, right? So there's, of course, the timeliness, then there's the quality, but the quality feedback cycle. And then finally, you're innovating and added a lot of components. So for example, in the secondary markets, the addition of the common share pricing and the better clarity around that, that's a big deal for us. And the fact that you've added that and you're expanding that even more makes a huge difference.
Well, I think this current market has definitely helped raise the importance of having quality data, and our focus on being more timely and being more accurate has definitely, I think, helped us, I would say, in this. So definitely everything that you're saying totally resonates with how you're thinking about Forge data and the growth.
I would even say, by the way, I would not be surprised if you think of yourself this way, but wearing maybe my Stanford hat more. So you're at the vanguard of a change in the way that private markets are treated, especially venture funded companies and the markets around venture funded companies. So at the early stage, I'm willing to concede. I taught venture capital at Stanford for 12 years. So I'm willing to concede at the earliest stages, it is as much or maybe more art than science. There's a lot qualitative and quantitative, but it's hard before anything has any revenue, before it has more than 3 employees. That's hard to understand valuation. I buy that. But I am very happy that the world is moving in a direction where it more or less becomes unacceptable to take a late stage company that 20 years ago would have been a publicly traded, mid-market, company, and to say, well, I feel like, right? There should be room for some feelings, but if you aren't surrounding that with data, I don't know what you're doing, right? And so I feel like you're a part of a very important trend that acknowledges the science of knowing things that are knowable, if perhaps hard to find, and you're making it easier to find and easier to manipulate. So that's a net good for the world. Like I'm all for art and all for educated guesses, but there are places where those should not be as well. And uniform valuation is one of them. So thanks to you, it doesn't have to be.
Thank you again, Dan, so much for your time. This was really good, and we should do it again.
I agree. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it and look forward to having more partnership with Forge and more conversations.